Let me hear y'all say rewind.
Welcome to the Broken English Podcast, Rewind. We back once again. Got some questions for you guys. For the sake of time and just to keep everything precise, not everybody has to answer. But, I mean, if you do feel compelled or your spirit, calls you to answer the question, feel free to answer. But I do want to start off with the first question being posed to all of you. What is the hardest crowd you've ever performed in front of?
I don't really have hard crowds. I don't know. I feel like most crowds are... A hard crowd to me is a crowd that doesn't give you energy back. But sometimes when you talk to a crowd, they'll say, oh, I loved what you did. But it's like, oh, okay, I didn't hear anybody. I thought y'all didn't like it. So I wouldn't say I have too many hard crowds.
Got you. Okay. Yeah, everybody got to get this one. Everybody getting this one.
God.
And I'm going to need y'all to scoot up just a little bit on the mic.
First crowd I ever played, I was in this play when I was young. And I ain't going to say the crowd was bad, but just what happened. When I was little, it was my turn to go on stage, and I had to pee. And the stage manager was like, you on in 1 minute, you don't have time. Man, on my great-grandma's grave, I'm singing, doing my part in the play, and I'm like, I'm like 9, you feel me? Screaming, it's like a touring company. I was like, pissed on stage. Right on stage. People in the crowd like, oh my God, he's got to pee. What's wrong? Like
that's crazy.
I ran off the stage. People, they was clapping, they laughing, you know what I mean?
That's crazy.
Man, I always tell that story, like, fuck that stage manager.
I'm like,
I remember my grandma came like, why didn't you just go? I'm like, they wouldn't let me go. I had to run on stage, you know what I mean? They're like, bro, you came in so cute, you know what I mean? Showbiz. Pissed right there. Funny part is, though, in the play, the scene changed. It was a janitor. He came by with a broom, right? He acted like he was sweeping. And we was cracking up because it was something to get up. Like, damn, I wish he had a mop. You know what I mean?
Sweeping up piss is wild.
I mean, they closed the curtain real quick. If I can find the video from, I don't have that on tape, but I got the play. That was funny, man. Worst crowd ever.
that takes cake. That takes cake. Now I have to ask everybody that sits on the couches, like, what's your worst performance, so we can have that on, like,
What's the time that you did it?
yeah.
Worst performance.
You can edit
Worst
that
crowd.
out.
Worst crowd,
Yeah.
worst performance.
Oh, okay. We can ask that next. Give me this one.
For me, it's a little bit different. I'm in academia, so I did some research on the equity gap. What's the equity canyon? I don't even like the word gap. The equity canyon that exists between academic performance between our black students and our white students at my institution. And the numbers weren't flattering at all. And our university president was going to be at this conference. And he was going to be in my particular presentation session. But I had to tell it how it was. And so, there's a little bit of professional pressure on me at the time because I hadn't got tenure at that point. Tenure can be a really political process in higher education.
I've heard, yeah.
And so one of my cohort mates who was presenting with me, she was from a different department. Like, well, if you don't want to, I understand what you got. Do something else because they're not going to know that this isn't the research that you wanted to present. I was like, nah, fuck that. I'm gonna go ahead and do what I want to do, and it landed well. Had a really thorough dialogue with the university president after my presentation. They were already aware of the data. So then the dialogue became, what can we do to close the gap? Because we see that you're invested in the work. We want you to help with putting programming together. So, but some of the professional pressure going into that particular conference is a large conference, 300 people in the session.
Yeah.
So it's not just like a group of 10 who getting this information. It's 300 people who are going to be aware of this. But one of the things that in that particular field, particularly when it comes to our black males and our black female students, is lateral across higher ed. Community college, 4-year technical school, we're seeing that our black men and black women aren't succeeding at the same rate as their white counterparts. So what can we do systemically to change it? Because it's not a matter of ability, et cetera. So that changes the dialogue at that point too, when you just calling the thing what it is, like an institutional failure. So now what can we do to remedy that? And so, you know, in that particular instance though, I can't lie. Like I wasn't a little concerned, but it's one of those things, you know, what you gonna stand on, right? We all say that we're committed to certain things and we're about certain types of work. Okay, there's gonna be times when it's gonna be wildly uncomfortable. Are you still committed to it? Or is it when it's convenient? And I think that's the difference between, you know, a vocation and something that you're just interested in.
Got you. So you brought up that performance question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, man. Give it up. Give it up.
Okay, I'm still young, y'all, so I'm still in the foolishness. But I went to this one open mic, and I didn't eat all day. And when I got in the building, somebody was like, "Hey, I got some. You know, you trying to get something?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." So they poured me up.
And then
I've never performed so bad in my life. I'm so sorry to the host of that open mic. I'm like, I embarrassed her. I embarrassed myself. I'm like, I can't show my face here ever again.
So was it a drunk thing?
Yeah, man, I was definitely drunk. I was
about to say,
on
you left that
stage.
kind of ambiguous, man. I didn't know where to you
you
just
mad?
leave.
Something about an edible or something?
I was drunk on stage. I
Off of one drink?
Well,
What?
no, it was more than one. It was more than one.
Gotcha. You was having a good time.
I shouldn't have performed because
yourself in the trick
I
bag.
think she knew that because she didn't call me, but she told me she would call me. But I'm drunk, so I'm like, no, you said I could perform, so I'm gonna perform.
Oh God, she tried to look out. She tried to look out for you, like, hey, nah.
She tried to, but I was too lit. I was going, so I'm like, no, you said. I'm holding her accountable. She tried to keep me safe. I'm
That
like,
light work got heavy, bro.
I'm on the stage laughing. I'm on the stage throwing up
It's like a
signs.
yak
I'm like,
night.
yeah, nah.
You was
I know it's
you was
real.
gangbanging on stage.
Something dark.
It's middle fingers at the audience. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like,
You banging on people on stage.
I'm like, that never again. So don't drink before you perform. Just wait till after.
That's your PSA.
Wait till after.
Okay, Faheem,
What's happening?
favorite hobby?
Working out.
Working out. That's so mature of you to say. Like, you went to working out. I'm thinking, you know, we about to get some.
Nah, bro. Working out and traveling, particularly international travel. I think, particularly for black folks, once you're able to leave the country and see it from a different perspective, you can't come back the same. And that's going to force you to grow and in many cases be involved in the community, either socially, politically, or economically in ways that you hadn't before. Because a lot of what we've been given here in the States is a lie. A manufactured one too, right? Structured, tiered, deliberate, intentional. And so when you go to other places, particularly where other black folks is at, whether it be in the Caribbean, whether it be in Africa, whether it be certain parts of Central and South America, and you have this diasporic experience with other folks who identify as black, it just changes you. So that working out, particularly working out, it's a mental therapy thing for me too. It helps level me out. Like I'm better at all my roles intersectionally when I can work out. Like I'm a better human being after I get that done.
Got you.
Not to be too like super adult.
Nah, mind, body, spirit, man. You know, for sure. Dre, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I caught this last night. You said you performed at pretty much every state except for 2.
Yeah. I've never speaking. He's talking about getting out of the country, Alaska and Hawaii.
Okay.
Only two I haven't touched vocally.
Do you have 3 experiences Do you have 3 places where you've had an experience that stood out to you the most out of all the places that you've been?
I say the best reception I've ever had, and it's wild because I never played there before and nobody knew me. Baltimore. Man, Baltimore.
Wasn't expecting that. Wasn't expecting
I mean,
that.
it was just. I'm not gonna say I hate to say this, but I'll say this. It's controversial sometimes to say this, but white people see music festival, they buy tickets for a music festival. For music. Black people pay for a name. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I follow it.
These folks was black. You know what I mean? It's our people. They had a 3-day music fest. It was like some pop-up. Kind of like, if Broken English decided to throw a 3-day fest type. And how these artists play. The audience, you would have thought every act was they like favorite band. You know what I mean? That energy, that vibe was great. I say Baltimore, Nashville, and Columbus. Everything in Columbus, Ohio, I've touched. I'm honored. The reception, these audiences. That's why I moved there. The love I had. So that was probably my top 3 cities for sure.
Got you. Okay. All right, got another audience question. Lightwork, this is specifically for you. How do you understand your role as an intellectual, and then how do you reconcile that role with who you are as a person?
I mean, I feel like they fit into each other. Who you are as a person will definitely show in your intellect, and your intellect will show up through who you are as a person. So I did go to school on an academic scholarship. I studied finance, and I feel like you can see that through my poetry when, like Triff says, oh, you could tell she reads. Like, I like watching documentaries. I take notes on documentaries as I watch them just because I like doing that. So I feel like it's you mix them. I feel like mix everything. I don't like to keep things separate. Like even us, like we got dressed because we like getting dressed. We also do our talent. So like mix.
Mm-hmm. Hey, simply put. This is a question for each of you. What's the biggest difference you notice about yourself from your starting point to where you are now in your particular medium? Do I gotta make somebody go first? I think
the biggest difference is comfortability and knowing that people are going to accept you, because that's the hardest thing, like self-doubt, or at least for myself. It was like, okay, I don't know people who even care, but people do. That's what I've noticed, like the way that I've been received everywhere I go. It's just like, wow, okay, you don't have to be so scared, you don't have to be so nervous, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you get, because I couldn't even spit without sitting down. Now I can spit. I don't even use a mic most of the time. So, I mean, you just get more and more comfortable. I feel like the comfort is what changes, and then you'll get to the point where you just like
own in space. I would say the biggest difference now from when I first started in academia is my comfortability with naming a thing and being authentic in those spaces. I think oftentimes, particularly with a lot of the research that I do, you're concerned with fragility. And not just white fragility, black fragility as well, particularly when it comes to having open and honest dialogues about some of the internal issues that we have, but in our communities, but also approaching it from an academic lens. And so, initially in my foray in academia, I would massage an issue and kind of tiptoe around it. And as I've matured and grown, I recognize I might not have this particular space with this particular group of people. Again, I need to give it to them how it is, at least from my POV. And then standing on that and having those moments of, uncomfortable dialogue potentially, but I think that's where growth can happen, and being solution-oriented, that's where the solutions can be found in those periods of discomfort. So I would say that's one of the things that I'm cognizant of at this moment and how I've grown in my particular craft and what I do.
I'll say the biggest difference, I hate to be so simple with it, but from, when I started to now, it's honestly maturity. When I was a child, I had some of the greatest opportunities as a child, singer, performer. But all those decisions was made for me. You know what I mean? I had no control over anything, And now it's just about making decisions that will benefit myself, my team, their families, you know what I mean? Like, long term, it's not just, this centralized goal. So that's mainly the biggest change, is just being able to have control over, how the trajectory of my career, how I want it to be, and just the maturity of being able to prioritize the right decisions, what's right for what we want to do, how to affect everybody that's involved.
Dope. Another question for all three of you. How and what do you do to, I guess, take a brief moment of respite or step away from your medium? I mean, it takes up energy for you guys to do what you do. In the moments between shows. I mean, we had a show last night. We come into a podcast, so it's not that moment where you guys actually have to yourselves to recollect. What do y'all usually do in that downtime to, I guess, re-energize and restore yourselves? Anybody?
For me, it's working out, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Prayer.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Getting into my Quran. Being intentional with the time I spend with my son as well. Yes, and getting to experience some of the stuff I got going on through his eyes. Because he's a digital native, right? So he knows what a podcast is. He's in second grade, but some of the people he likes on YouTube got podcasts too.
Yeah.
So like, Daddy doing a podcast this morning? Yeah. What you talking about? I'm trying to, put it in the language. He wants to know, right? And so that gives you perspective on certain things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's most important. And so those are some of the things that I do to give myself respite. But I also, to be honest, I need to be better at self-care. Because I operate near maximum bandwidth all the time, and that's not a really good recipe for longevity.
Yeah.
Eventually you will burn out. And so that's a skill set that I'm learning. It's just to take time and say no to stuff. Yeah. Right? Which can be hard because you don't want to let people down. You don't necessarily want to miss out on certain opportunities. But they won't be there if you're not there. Mm-hmm. So that's a skill set I'm learning too.
I like to clear myself. So go out in nature, go on walks, feel fresh air. Even when it's cold, I definitely like the cold. I feel like it cleanses you, it clears you up. I don't even like to think, so I'm not going to take a journal and try to think things out, just completely clear myself so I can become full of whatever I want. So when it comes, I'll be clear. It'll just be able to come in.
I like that.
My biggest release is food, actually. I juice regularly. Try to give my body proper fuel. You know what I mean? It's funny, I saw Tripp starting this thing online where he's doing, fruit first thing in the morning. I'm like, oh man, it's good to see somebody pushing, just you gotta advocate for yourself sometimes.
Word.
You know what I mean? Your own body is talking to you. Treat it right. I ain't saying, I got, other habits, that may not be as great, but I really have learned to take my health seriously, and food is probably how I really recharge and refuel myself, in between performances.
No.
The healing factor, you know what I mean?
Y'all all look great. Y'all look like 800 runners, bro.
Nah, he just doubled down on the mind, body, spirit. He like, nah, working out. He like, nah, food, energy, intake, all of that. Give me that. That's funny, man. I'm weak. So, This question will go to you two, since you guys are, I guess, performing artists. Do you guys have a favorite piece from yourself?
Damn. I think nobody ever asked me that.
I do.
You do? Okay.
I have a favorite. I have a new favorite. It changes. Mine's definitely changes. It's my favorite one to spit. The Politicians piece. That's my favorite one to spit because I feel like I went off. I'm like.
We was all hyped. We was all hyped on it because we mad at the government. I don't know if I got a favorite piece.
You don't?
It's like.
Do you have somebody else's, like you have a favorite song to sing?
Man, I'm gonna say, since you said it's kind of new, I'm gonna say it's new to me too. It's an artist I love for a long time. He's out of Brazil. His name is Djavan. It was the first, I say, black, you know what I mean, man that I heard jazz in a way that wasn't like, I hate to be cliche, but it wasn't boring. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I had to convince people that jazz was interesting, especially our age group. You know what I mean? Have a connotation associated with jazz, this old thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? My favorite, I would probably say some of his stuff has influenced my work, so I have to say that. I don't know. I think the piece I did last night feels like everybody want to, get what you give back, return in relationship. Sometimes you want to know what it feels like, I say that. That's probably my favorite.
Got you. Faheem, question for you. You talked a little bit about your relationship with your son. I guess on the daily, what's the biggest constant reminder of, like, I guess that orientation of being that father figure?
Man, I take my son to school and I pick him up. So, like, I'm a super active dad. And talking to him about how his day went. And, like, what's important to a second grader is not as important, but it's important to him. And having intentional dialogue around that, though. Like, the questions I'll ask would be the same questions I would ask an adult. And that's helping orient his nexus to be a critical thinker about what's going on. It might be something simple, like he might be beefing with one particular student. Like, they're always telling me when I'm at the water fountain, but they're never telling me when I'm on the carpet, and I just don't understand why. And, like, just trying to understand, but asking those critical questions because for him it's important. And I also recognize, if we're being totally transparent, it's essential for me to pour into him in an authentic way, to love on him in an authentic way, because the world ain't got that for him. I recognize that, he has his village, he has his community, but that's not representative of the world for a little black boy. So providing that space for him to be his most authentic self, to fall apart when he needs to, and being present, allowing him to be present with me when I'm going through certain things, because we've had some transitions in our family dynamic in recent years, and not necessarily closeting him from that. So he knows how to process his emotions and life occurrences in a healthy way. Particularly for our young men and our young women, the ages of 8 to 14 are critical. A lot of our most foundational life experiences occur then that are going to affect the initial trajectory of our adulthood before we get the skill set to autocorrect, right? And so doing my best to limit the scarring that's undoubtedly going to happen, but not necessarily being a proponent of that. So showing up, being accountable, being vulnerable, things that, oftentimes in our community aren't necessarily attached to black manhood and fatherhood. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. I do want to get a quick time check where we at on time, because I think we are. Got you. Okay, so I do want to ask this one last question, very, very light, but a lot of people didn't get a chance to connect with y'all afterwards. I know people came up to speak to y'all, but just if y'all quickly want to run through, where can people find y'all at? How can they reach y'all?
You can find me on Instagram. It is Can I Muse You with the M. So Can I MUSEU.
DrePeace.com. That's it. DrePeace.com. You look for anything you see Dre Peace in Weirfield Place, come out, party with us.
On IG, Gap Tooth Genius 1911. I have a Facebook, but I'm on there once every 3 months. So if you're trying to get in contact with me, Gap Tooth Genius 1911 on IG, and his.prof1911 at Gmail for any information that's best exchanged there.
Make sure outside of the podcast, y'all are continuing to support the show. Once again, we are first Friday and Saturday of every month. Like I said, follow us, Broken English _101 for all of the details, the link tree, all of that. We got everything for you to connect with us. Follow us. First show, first of the month, Saturday, Friday, Dayton, Columbus. We love y'all.
Let me hear y'all say rewind.
Rewind.